Remember it.
Taxi!
Hello and welcome to LCDC TV, the news channel for the London cab trade. Well, what a week it's been, eh? People buying cups of tea for everyone. I've never known such good humour in the cab trade this week. And why is that? It was a court case on Monday. Yesterday, I attended a meeting with the other trade groups, senior TfL, management, Helen Chapman, Everett, and most importantly, Heidi Alexander, the Deputy Mayor for Transport. And I'll tell you about the meeting and what was really positive that come out of that. But we start back to Monday, the court case stand. On Monday, and as we know, that's been coming for years now. And really, it was all down to Yassine Aslam and James Farah about 6 years ago, taking Uber to court with workers' rights, and it's just snowballed. And they were so dogged, like a little Jack Russell. They never give up, and they was snapping at Uber's heels all the time, going to court. Uber would appeal it back to court, but we are where we are. So Monday, the good news was that Uber, the company, was found to be the principal and not the agent.
That's correct.
Which means that they should be liable for VAT. Some are saying it can go back as far as 6 years. I think Uber's VAT bill, if Uber had to pay the VAT bill all above board and it was all in place, it would be about £2.5 billion. But more importantly for the cab trade, this goes on. It's not just Uber that will pay the VAT, it's every private hire operator, Dan, isn't it?
Quite possibly. Depending, if they're principal in their, well, they are principal, but whether they, the contracts are, if they got a turnover, don't forget there's a lot of, single operators within the, the licence figures. Yeah. So it's only big companies, with a turnover of 85,000. But I mean, going back to the, James Farrow and Nassim, I mean, Uber have constantly, have you seen it lately? What they've been saying? It's like they're the guiding light now on workers' rights. They're telling every other operator to follow them. For 6 years they were dogged. They were trying to deny workers' rights, and now they're the champion of workers' rights.
Because they lost in court.
Well, they lost in court, and that's a knock on what from Monday as well, because they're doing exactly the same thing when it comes to Monday's verdicts,
Yeah.
And it makes you laugh that the fact is that they are the champion of of workers' rights, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
But
getting back to Monday, Dan, massive ramifications.
It is, yeah.
Massive ramifications. And we had a show a couple of months ago talking about the corruption at Uber with the government, Kolsky, Cameron, Osborne, putting pressure on the then Mayor Boris. He's under pressure now, I'm seeing on the telly, but under pressure about any private hire regulations, don't bring it in, the light touch regulation of the private hire. And what I believe is damning, Dan, is that back then, in 2014...
Yeah, well, I mean...
Can I just read?
Yeah, go on. No,
Yeah.
do it in a sec, right? Well, what basically happened with the Supreme Court hearing, the workers' rights hearing? Effectively, it wasn't to do with, the regulatory side, TfL, whether they were compliant that way. But the judge in the Supreme Court hearing, well, one judge, Lord Leggett, he basically made a couple of comments regarding, even though it was about workers' rights, he highlighted the regulatory aspects of the way these contracts are worded.
I'm going to read it now. This is the view of Judge Leggett, yeah?
Yeah.
The Supreme Court judgment includes commentary regarding the contractual relationship between operators and drivers as set out in their terms and conditions, to which private hire operators should give due consideration.
That's TfL's notice, what they issued after the Supreme Court hearing. What happened was, Lord Leggett in that Supreme Court hearing, he made these, they're called obiter comments. Obiter dictum is the Latin name for them. And basically what they are is, they're comments, they're not specific to that case, you know, they don't set precedent, you know, they're not, it's not like case law, they're just like passing comments he makes in that case. And them comments were to do with the regulatory aspect of these contracts.
Yeah.
What happens is, Uber, the contracts prior to Monday, they said that the driver was the transport provider. The passenger contracted with the driver, and the driver was principal, and they were acting as agents for the driver. Well, what happened was, Lord Leggett looked at them, you know, the contracts, and said, well, hold on a minute, that can't be sort of right.
It's not right.
Even, you know, like I say, even though he was more concerned with the workers' rights at that time, he's made these comments by saying, you know, if you're accepting the bookings, you're making provisions, etc. You are effectively a principal. You've got to be, and it makes sense. You are. Mm. You know, so he threw it up in the air. Also, what he said was, and to try and, you know, sort of make sense of what he said was, he said, well, look, if you say these contracts are that the driver's are principal, then surely they would be accepting the bookings and, you know, etc. Yeah. So after he said them comments, and then it was found that they were they were workers. Obviously, the trade were up in arms. You know, we done a show, and it's basically highlighted the fact that you know, these contracts are unlawful.
The drivers can't be the principal.
That's exactly right. Well, that's when TfL issued that notice. They sent that notice out, and they made operators aware that, you know, look out for these comments in this hearing, because you could possibly be unlawful. Well, what effectively happened was, Uber, in their wisdom, well, I won't get into the timeline and why they've done it, etc., because there's been lots of debate on that. But what they effectively done was say, well, we've got this, there's this point of law where there's a dispute in facts. Because Uber are saying, you know, these contracts are fine, the driver is the principal, whereas Lord Leggett has said, no, they're not. So they applied to the High Court for a Part 8 declaration. Now, what a Part 8 declaration is like, if there's a dispute in facts, they ask, you know, the judges
to
clarify the position, what they're asking. It's similar to the meter case. Remember the meter case where
TfL went for clarification,
to say is this a meter or isn't it?
Yes.
You know, so it's you know, kind of the same. So what Uber asked was, is it a requirement under the 98 Act for an operator who accepts a booking to enter into a contractual obligation with a passenger as principal to provide that journey? So basically what they're saying is, we provide the journey, we are the main men in it, not the drivers.
Yeah.
Basically. Well, it was argued at the High Court. Uber weren't very clever in their arguments. The judge sort of tore them apart, as did sort of UTAG's lawyer, David Matthias, and Jason Galbraith Martin, who was working for Farrers Union. And it was found that there is a requirement in the Act that they have got to enter into this contractual obligation. So what that effectively has done means that all the contracts, all these terms and conditions are unlawful. So, I mean, the consequences of that are far-reaching. You know, what it basically, I mean, there's two aspects what stand out for me. The first one is TfL's role in it. Right?
Shambolic.
Well, I mean, it really, really is. It'll make you spit your beer out if you're having a drink. We done that show when was it, in sort of February or time, and when was that show? Sort of summertime?
Yeah.
Where we brought up Korsky Links and Cameron Osborne, and we talked about the Uber model investigation. And in that Uber model investigation, Garrett Emerson, after only 2 weeks, you know, has wrote to Deadring and said their licence isn't in question, don't worry. And if we're into a 7-month investigation. Well, in that investigation, TfL looked at the very same point
that the court have looked at on Monday.
Monday, the very same point, all right? Now,
can I read it?
Read it. This is from the model investigation.
Right. This is from Garrett Emerson and Howard Carter, who was the General Legal Counsel for TfL. And it was to Leon Daniels, right? And basically, there's a bit of it there, right? I've marked it up. But like Danny said, listen to this. Bring your logos back. 2nd of July 2014. In the course of our correspondence with Uber London, we have requested that they amend their customer terms and conditions to make clear the respective roles of Uber BV, Uber London, and the private hire drivers. Yeah, 3. We are now satisfied that their amended terms have clarified the position. The proposed amendments state that Uber London accepts a booking for the purposes of Section 2 of the 1998 Act. The proposed amendments also state that Uber London accept bookings as agent, acting on behalf of the drivers. But this is only for the purposes of drivers entering into a contract directly with passengers. We do not think that this is incompatible with Section 2 for the reasons set above.
So basically what they said is that they found that it's compliant. There is no requirement in legislation for the operator. I mean, basically what it is they've gone, the High Court ruling on Monday is a U-turn on that and basically said,
this is wrong.
That's wrong.
Yeah.
That is totally wrong. Now you've got to ask yourself, why, with pressure from government,
why have TfL found this to be right?
Well, they said that, you know, they basically said that they're acting as agents, the operator, and it's lawful. Well, it's not lawful. The 98 Act from Monday has stated that it's the operator wants the principle.
So how this is so messed up is that our regulator thinks it's lawful, but never went to court to seek clarification on whether their view was lawful and correct. Right?
Well, don't forget, you know, we go back to Isabel Deadring, Korsky. You know, your licence is not in question.
After 2 weeks.
You'll be found compliant. Well, is it any wonder they went against... Well, they've effectively gone against legislation. They found against legislation.
So for you watching, what's gone on is 7 years TfL have allowed this illegal practice to carry on for all the private hire using this model. But on Monday in the court, in the High Court, the judge looked at it and legally said, TfL are wrong, he's right. See, like Danny said, no wonder the cab trade's been under such immense pressure with the numbers of the private hire and the private hire flat, you know, just growing. We all know that. Because they've been allowed to operate illegally.
Well, TfL didn't do their job properly. Or
TfL haven't done their work.
Well, was it willful? You know what, you've got to ask yourself, was it willful, what they done? You know, no one knows, but, you know, when they're under pressure from government
and it was a different landscape 7 years ago, right?
Our Prime Minister.
Our Prime Minister, Greensill. Boris Cameron, Greensill Cameron. We know what they're all about, right? So for 7 years in London, the cab trade has had to suck it up with the private hire industry working under this way,
Well, it's
illegally.
Unlawful.
We've been working against the opposition that's been operating unlawful. And we're told to suck it up. And where are these people? Where's your Garrett Emerson? He's just been let go by the ambulance service, right? Where's Garrett? Where's Leon Daniels? The trouble for the cab trade is we're left holding the baby. How many cab drivers have left the trade, gone bankrupt, got divorced, lost their ass because they couldn't make money because we had 100,000 private hire drivers work in London unlawfully? Where is the redress for the cab driver, for the cab trade? Where?
I mean, it beggars belief, doesn't it? It just beggars belief.
It makes me feel, I'll be honest, makes me feel sick in my stomach. Because over the years, you have all the mainstream media, moody cab drivers moaning again. Well, what was proved on Monday is that TfL didn't really do their own work on this, or for whatever reason, come up with their own opinion of the law.
Yeah, which was incorrect.
Which was incorrect. And 7 years later, it took a judge to tell TfL you were wrong. And that's all well and good, right? But where's the redress for the cab trade?
Well, if you think, I mean, it's not given, but it probably will be that operators are now required to charge VAT.
And that's national, isn't it, as well?
It will go, but even though this is specific to the 98 Act, it's the same principle. You know, if you're accepting a private hire booking, you are the principal in the operation. The regulatory burden says you're the principal operator. So it will go to the 76 Act. I imagine there's probably licensing officers around the country looking at this ruling now, going, well, hold on, we're going to have to, do something with these terms and conditions. But it will go nationwide. I've no doubt about that. So
the ramifications, Dan.
Well, the fact is that
ramifications for the private hire industry.
Well, if it has, if it does come down that these operators are principal, you only got to look at the, government guidance with regards to VAT. If you're principal, you're providing the transport service. It's a VATable service. So them operators,
like the radio circuits, when the taxi radio circuits, I believe they used to have to pay VAT. Yeah.
When with that, but when you think about it, 2014 had TfL had done their jobs for the last 7 years, last 8 years, whatever. All them private hire journeys, what everyone getting for next to nothing would have been 20% dearer. All the effects it's had on us. TfL, by not doing their jobs, means our competitors have been at an advantage, because the fact is that they haven't had to charge what they're supposed to charge. Yeah. But not only that, I mean, what TfL haven't done, by not doing their job properly, government has lost out on 20% of every private hire journey for the last 7 years.
Billions of pounds.
Billions.
And they're asking the government to bail TfL out. TfL have actually lost the country billions of pounds. Russie, have a look. Get some heads chopped off. Yeah,
it's madness,
it's disgraceful.
But I mean,
it's it's disgusting.
It's kind of it does make you think, doesn't it? But
it makes me very angry and very upset. What's the repercussions for the taxi trade?
Well, obviously, it's if these operators do have to pay VAT, it puts 20% on every journey. That is, that's massive to us, isn't it? Your competitor overnight is told to pay 20% more on their journeys.
And we all know, as cab drivers, people used Uber because they used to say they're cheaper than you. Yeah. Uber are doing it for that. Will you do it for this, right?
Well, that's it.
And then if you put the workers' rights into the mix.
Well, that's another thing. This ruling basically said that the operator is the principal and the drivers are, effectively working. Well, if there is any future worker rights claims or cases, Not that it needs any help because of what, you know, James Farrow's done and Nassim Aslam. It's a dot on the card that they're workers.
So Transport for London, it's been shown that you've messed up big time, right? How do you correct all this? They should be making, as a condition of licence for private hire drivers, that they pay the VAT, they do the right thing, and they also have to include workers' rights in their conditions to get a licence from TfL, surely.
Well,
We've got a Labour mayor.
Well, if you look at that,
supports workers, the Sadiq.
You know, it was, I can't remember. It must have been the summer, was it? When they put it round about May. Yeah, it was about May when Uber went for the declaration. They informed TfL they were going for the declaration. So in May, TfL knew it was either going to go one way or the other. Either, you know, the driver can be principal, then TfL ain't got to do nothing. But if the operator's got to be principal, then TfL would have had to, you know, put some measures in place. They, you know, like you're talking about the licensing criteria, etc. Well, they did. They've given the operator the warning. They've said what you read out earlier. They give you a heads up. So they said, like, it's coming, right? TfL, and they're sitting on it going, well, what do we do?
Well, you saying that, yesterday at the meeting with the Deputy Mayor, Helen Chapman was there. I've got a little story about her later. But she was there yesterday, and I said to her, so until the private hire companies don't play ball and adhere to the conditions, surely you've got to suspend them. Because from court on Monday, they're saying that the private hire companies are acting unlawfully. And if it was me or you as a cab driver, or you watching today as a cab driver, and you was in court on Monday, and the judge found in court that you was acting unlawfully, I bet you wouldn't be working tonight.
Well, I mean, you know, you could say I don't think they're going to, suspend everyone's licence. You know, it's probably unrealistic. But what they should have is a definitely set date. You know, they should be saying, right, by say you knew it was coming along. We told you in May it was coming along. They issued a TPH notice. It's coming along, right? You got 6 weeks. You got 2 months. You've got to have these contracts in place. But what TfL have done, they've gone wishy-washy again. They've put out another notice saying, well, we'll look at it when you renew your licence. And well, no, that's not good enough.
That's not good enough. They could be renewing their licence in 2023.
Well, you know, that's exactly it. You know,
poor TfL.
I mean, it's you know. I mean, getting back to the actual consequences to the private hire operators. I mean, I don't think, and it's only my personal opinion, but it's backed up by a couple of people I've spoken to, is that Uber aren't too unpleased with what's happened with this outcome. And I'll explain why. They were on the hook. You know Jolyon and the Good Law Project.
If you don't know Jolyon, the Good Law Project, look at our back videos. I interviewed Jolyon. The club backed him financially to do the legal case for them to pay VAT. Yeah,
that's right. And also you got the ruling in Supreme Court, which basically said, you know, if the workers, your principal, you pay the VAT. Well, what Uber have basically effectively done by doing this Part 8 and seeking the declaration is that would be, if they won it or got what they wanted, they could turn around to HMRC and say, look, the High Court judge has said the contracts are right. That it's the driver who's the principal. You know, they are the transport.
So we don't pay VAT.
We ain't got to pay VAT. So they could have won it that way. But what they've effectively done by seeking this declaration is when they lose it, and I would imagine they probably knew they would lose it, or they would be liable for VAT anyway, because they would be on the hook for $2 billion because of Jolyon and the workers' right case. They've looked at it, and you know, again, it's only my own opinion, but they've looked at it and said, well, hold on, we're going to pay $2 billion anyway because it's coming. Well, what do we do? How do we negate, how do we sort of lessen the impact on us? Well, by going to the Supreme Court, High Court, and seeking this declaration, the declaration has found that it's a requirement on the part of the Private Hire Act. So that means all operators now are liable for that.
So it's not just Uber, they've dragged everyone
They've taken everyone with them, right? So they have taken. So what effectively has happened is, by losing, they've come out of it better by losing than not playing the game at all. Had they not gone for the declaration, they would have been on the hook for the thing. This way, they've lessened it by taking everyone with them.
So all their competitors have got to pay it as
all
well.
Pay the VAT. Now, I can see something coming down the line where they turn around and say, well, hold on a minute. If you're going to collect 2 billion off us, you're going to have to collect 2 billion off everyone else. Obviously. But, our government going to go to every operator in the country and say, give us 6 years of VAT. I mean,
when you look at the state of the country financially, right, and how deep they're into their eyeballs in debt, you would think going out and claiming 2 billion and another 2 billion would be a massive plus for the government. Yeah?
It would be, but I mean,
we know what they're like. We know, Dan. Yeah,
yes, but you know full well.
They'd probably say, well, start from next year then, going forwards, not retrospectively.
Well, see, if they were to say, I don't know, ABC cars in Greenwich or whatever, right, okay, we want 20% of every job you've done for the last 6 years. They ain't going to have the money to pay. They'd be insolvent.
Yeah.
And so would many, many more companies up and down the country. Now, once these companies go, that means jobs are gone.
They'll be on benefits.
So what governments are going to do? Are they going to go out and get retrospective VAT payments off every operator in the country?
Yeah, but I always heard, right, it's enough when you're in trouble with the tax man, but I know fellas who've had businesses in the past and they say, when the VAT man comes calling, you get no squeeze from the VAT man.
Who knows?
So all you VAT man out there, get some overtime in and get your bags and start going around. Right, Dan, I think we spoke about Monday, the ramifications. There's not really that much more to say really about Monday.
I mean, well, there's the other part, the UTAG part.
Yeah.
And what UTAG done was they JR'd TfL's licensing of Free Now, and to say, you've licensed them unlawfully. Now that was on 2 points. One was what I spoke of earlier about the bookings. They effectively, if you're
So once Leggett had flagged it.
Yeah, once they flagged it.
People went, this ain't right.
That's right. And rightly, they've said, look, hold on, your drivers should have operators licence if they're accepting bookings,
Yeah.
And the second part of their claim was applying for hire. Well, technically, it wasn't found that the drivers accept bookings. TfL in their skeleton argument have said, well, hold on, we've looked at their systems, Free Now. The bookings don't go to the driver; they do accept. So it wasn't effectively one on that point of drivers accepting bookings, but because the Part 8 found that it's the operator that has to enter into the contract, it's sort of technically won on that point, if you know what I mean, because then bookings are, the terms and conditions are, unlawful. They're unlawful. They're unlawful.
Yeah.
And the second part was...
It's sort of cleared house a bit there.
More or less, yeah. And the second part was the
Flying
fire. Well, they lost that, but they've been given sort of leave to appeal. So they can try and overturn... I mean, there's significant rulings in that. The cases, there's Reading and versus Ali, and it'll be heard, It'll be on man.
When do you reckon that'll be?
I don't know, probably sometime next year. Okay. I have no idea, but it'll be interesting. But basically that's the uptick. And
so that was Monday, because like I said, we've had loads of people phoning in. what happened Monday? Who won? Who lost? What does that mean? I'm not sure. So hopefully after this, Danny's explanations, you get a bit of the history behind it all, and it clarifies exactly what went on. I'm going to talk about what went on yesterday, just briefly, Dan. I won't bore you. I won't bore you. We had a meeting, the trade meeting, with Vernon Everett, Heidi Alexander, Helen Chapman, Graham Robinson, the club, LTDA, UCG, RMT, Unite. And basically we had a rough agenda that we'd all thrown our hat in the ring on questions. And some of the topics discussed was charge points. Taxi drivers need to be issued by TfL with a special card, so only taxis can charge up on the charging points. You know, you drive a Zec.
Yeah.
Loads of reports, taxi drivers trying to get their cab charged, and the more and more cabs come on the road, the more important it is to have taxi-only charge points. Again, at the last meeting we have, TfL again said, we'll take that away and sort it. Yesterday they said, we've took it away, we haven't sorted it. Sorry, yeah. Then we talked about taxi ranks. Vernon Everett said next year, looks like the Elizabeth line's going to be starting to be open. Taxis have got ranks at certain stations, but there still seems to be obstacles in getting a cab rank near enough to all the stations, right?
Topical, right?
That's all going. Talking about access, taxi access, LTNs, asking Heidi Alexander if the mayor could make local authorities open up LTNs and bus gates for taxis as well. She said, well, that's predominantly a local authority issue. They don't really want to get involved. So, you know, talked about the £5 charge for taxi drivers, having to pay at Heathrow from next April. The point was made that taxis are publicly hired like a bus. I don't think buses pay to drop off at the airport. I'm sure the underground don't pay to drop off at the airport. It's all public transport, and that's what we are. We're not private hire. We're not a private vehicle. We're public, publicly hired, you know. And we argued very strongly that taxis should be exempt from paying the £5. Helen Chapman said they've had discussions with Heathrow, and it really comes down to Heathrow Airport thinking about it, and it's their decision. It's Heathrow Airport's call whether we pay or not. And that's going to be from now to April. I know the trade at the airports meeting Heathrow. We'll still be banging the drum at TfL and the mayor trying to get them to put pressure on Heathrow to drop the charge for us. The last 2 points I'll just touch on was one with Helen Chapman. I've known Helen for a long time. Worked together a long time at TfL. And yesterday we was discussing about the lack of cabs, the cab fleet, how it shrunk so much. We're down to about, what, just 14,000 cabs?
Just over 1,490 or so like that.
We're like 14,000, 5,000 of them are Zec, 9,000 are diesel. And basically it was this. I said to Helen, there's a massive shortage of cabs. Something's got to be looked at, something's got to be done. Suggestions were made of being allowed to buy a cab from out of London and bring it in. She said no, any new cab's got to be Zec. And she said that, and this is important for you watching, right? She said that she's unaware that no cab drivers can't get a cab. I've not heard that, she said. I said to her, I was out in the cab Saturday, POB, and a woman banged on my window, almost crying because she was in Sloane Street, needed to go to the theatre in Shaftesbury Avenue. Where do I get a cab, please? Implored me, where do I get a cab? I said, I can't help you, I'm going to Paddington, my love. I can't help you. She said, I've been waiting for a cab, I can't get a cab. And she was crying because she had bought these tickets for the theatre for a birthday and couldn't get to Shaftesbury Avenue, right? I said to Helen, so I've got members of the public telling me, Helen, I can't find a cab. My phone's ringing at the office, members and non-members. Grant, you don't know any garage that's got a cab. So that's the public can't find a cab. That's cab drivers can't find a cab. And as I said, Helen, I don't know how you've made self-employed people unemployed. Beggars belief, right? And then I also said, if you might have seen the video we done at Colts Cabs, Michael Glassman said to me, I've got drivers turning up every day saying to me, Grant, when can I get a cab? Where can I find a cab, Michael? So everyone can't find a cab, and Helen says she don't believe there's a problem. So we'll be putting Helen's email on the bottom of the video, yeah? Look down there. Beep, 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 beep. Or it might be beep, 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 beep. So what I'm saying to you drivers, if you're watching this, stuck at home, sick of daytime TV, yeah, which you probably would be, you can't find a cab. Helen says she's not aware of it. So keep it clean, keep it respectful, everyone, yeah? Email Helen and say you haven't been able to go to work for the last month. Christmas is coming. You're in dire straits. And if Helen could put you in touch with the garage that's got all these cabs, you'd be highly delighted. Thank you very much. Keep it clean. Secondly, Helen, another big thing that happened yesterday, and I'll be brief because we have taken your time up, right? This is what's gone on yesterday. As you know, the LCDC have been putting questions into the Mayor through City Hall. I've written to the Mayor saying to him that in 2013, the Mayor had these proposals that he wanted the taxi trade's emissions cut by 65% to 2025. Yeah? Yeah.
Level from 2013 to 25, a 65% reduction in emissions.
Back in 2013, we had a fleet of around 23,000 cabs.
About 22,500, yeah. 20.
He's finicky, isn't he? 22,500, but they was all diesel.
That's right. That's right.
Take it from 2013 to where we are now. The decommissioning, the pandemic, the cab trade has shrunk. The fleet has gone from 22.5 to about 14,000, right? Nearly 5,000 of those are ZEC cabs. So what I've been saying to Heidi and the Mayor, and to anyone who would listen, is this. The figures you used in 2013 are not applicable now in 2021. Can't be. We got a shrunken fleet. Small. And because of the amount of ZECs, I am sure, and we are sure at the club, that if you was to do another analysis on the emissions projection, it would not be what you had in 2013. Do you get what I'm saying? So this is it. I said to Helen, and I said to Heidi, yeah, and Vernon, look, please, can you instruct that very clever team at TfL who can work out the pollution and the emissions from numbers? And can you look at the new cab trade numbers, the shrunken fleet, and say, wow, if we had the fleet numbers in 2013, you wouldn't reach it until there. But with your fleet now, it's there, yeah? And I've been probably one of Heidi Alexander's worst critics in the past, yeah? I don't really feel she's battered our corner as well as she could be, right? Don't meet her as often as we should do, not like Val Shawcross, right? And I still feel that way, but I'll give her a credit where credit's due. She sort of tossed her hair over as if to go, oh, God. Yeah. But then she said, Helen Chapman, will you speak to the team, the clever guys who do the numbers, and ask them to construct a new emissions total?
Yeah, just review the targets.
Review the targets.
Basically, the emissions. I mean, what we believe is, currently the age limit's 14 years, isn't it? By November next year, it'll go down to 13 years. But what we envisage and what we believe is the case is because of the decrease and the amount of ZECs coming on and the amount of diesels what have gone, is that if it remains at 14 years, we've gone from 22,500 to say 9,000 because of diesel. We're talking diesels. If it carries on at 14 years, from now till 2025, if it stays at 14 years, just naturally, as vehicles reach the 14 age limit, they come off.
The older diesels will be falling away.
We've got 3 years of vehicles reaching the 14 age limit to bring it down from 9,000, if you know what I mean. So by 2025, there won't be 9,000. They'll be in the region, roughly, about 7,500. Well, that takes it from 22,000 down to 7,000, which is the 65% reduction. Quite simple. I mean, so if they are reviewing it, at least they'll know whether it's the case. But I mean, like we say, we're quite confident that is the case. Just for the simple fact is, the numbers have dropped, and one thing they didn't envisage is that during the pandemic, a lot, well, not a lot, but I mean a few drivers with newer cabs, Euro 5, say for instance, Euro 5 Mercs, what they done, they took the delicensing money, like if it was like 10,000 delicensing, took that money, then sold their vehicle up north and got a relatively high value from that. Now TfL didn't envisage people doing
They
that.
thought it was just the older
TX2s. They thought it would be just to come off, and they didn't envisage the delicensing scheme going so quickly in such a short space of time. They thought it would be, 1,000, 300, 400 a year, just taking up it, and then going to the next year there'll be some in the pot. But the pot's gone. The pot's gone because people have taken up that option. A lot of the garages were in trouble, took up the option to delicense cabs.
The whole fleet's gone.
Well, what they had, they could only do, it was something about, I think it was because of something to do with state law, they could only take 200 grand or 200 euros worth of state aid type thing. So, but that could have been 15, 20 cabs
that can't not being rented out now. Hence
that's
the drivers
being.
That's
exactly
so.
Right.
So that's where we are. So, and what I did say as a closing point, the deputy mayor Heidi, she said, well, maybe even if you did meet the emissions target, I don't know whether the mayor would stop it. He would just keep carrying on. And I said, look, I'm not being funny, Heidi, but if the new figures showed that the cab trade spent £300 million on ZEC vehicles, really made an effort to clean up London, right? And he's still going to punish us. I said that to me would be just malicious and vindictive on the mayor's part. And even Vernon Everett, senior manager at TfL, shook his head. He agreed with us. So if we do get the figures that we hope and envisage we are, then come on, Sadiq, if you're watching this, do the right thing, yeah? Keep it at 14 years. You're going to get what you wanted anyway, and, you're going to keep cab drivers in their jobs, yeah?
And got to remember also, there was a consultation on this, the age reduction, and all the information in that consultation is now incorrect because of what's happened. So people were responding to that consultation, and the figures were all incorrect because the projections are all wrong because they've been skewed by the pandemic and the uptake of the licensing scheme.
So there you go. I'd just like to say we're going to be out this week, going live with Alan McGrady, the LCDC cab ranks highways representative. We're going to be showing you actually the new setup, the disastrous setup over at Covent Garden, right? Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse over that side of the river with the Aldwych being gridlocked most of the time, they've surpassed themselves, Westminster, and they're going to bring gridlock to Covent Garden, yeah? So I will be seeing you later on this week. Again, thanks for watching. If you like it, subscribe to the channel, like, subscribe, but most of all, as I keep saying, this is for the cab trade, right? Leave a comment. if there's stuff you've heard on here and you want answered, comment and we'll get back to you. Dan, thanks for coming in.
Well, see ya.
Danny Scarp on Twitter. Grant Davis here. Thanks for watching. Speak to you soon. Be lucky.
Right, you've been watching LCDC TV with me, John Sitton. Bring your dinner.
The mayor's always interested in his buses. Let's put all the buses on, put the buses on, TfL has been a total disaster. A total disaster.
I agree with that 100%.
You're saying the driver's actually turning up at your garage in the morning asking for a cab, is that correct?
Well, worse than that, I literally had a driver on the phone crying yesterday because he can't pay his mortgage this month. I've had drivers turn up with their wives and children, with their wives now saying, please give my husband a cab.
You know, with the greatest respect, everyone's entitled to earn a fortune, but if you're going to take big salaries, TfL, get off your backside and do your job.
Wow, what a fantastic interview. Courtney, thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
What a pleasure, eh?
And keep tuning into LCDC TV.